Well, hello, my pilot knob parents and kindergarten friends. I am so glad to see you. You know, we have a special event, and I'm looking forward to seeing you as we come together to read one of my favorite books, a book called Frog and Toad Are Friends. So we have a book club coming up on Thursday, November the 1st from 6 to 7 p.m. Now, I know you're new to this book club stuff, but we've been doing these for years, and it's a blast. So what I'd like you to do is, if you can, check out the book from our school library or your public library, or get it on your Kindle, find it someplace, you might already have one, and take some time reading some of the stories. Because at our book club, we're going to talk about the story Spring, another story called The Story, A Lost Button, one of my favorites, and we have a great activity set up for you, A Swim, and The Letter. So actually right now I'm going to read my favorite story to you, and it's called A Lost Button. Toad and Frog went for a long walk. They walked across a large meadow. They walked in the woods. They walked along the river. At last they went back home to Toad's house. "Oh, drat," said Toad. "Not only do my feet hurt, but I have lost one of the buttons on my jacket." "Don't worry," said Frog. "We will go back to all the places where we walked. We will soon find your button." They walked back to the large meadow. They began to look for the button in the tall grass. "Here is your button," cried Frog. "That is not my button," said Toad. "That button is black. My button was white." Toad put the black button in his pocket. Found a black button, but Toad's was white. A sparrow flew down. "Excuse me," said the sparrow. "Did you lose a button?" "I found one." "That is not my button," said Toad. "That button has 2 holes. My button has 4 holes." Toad put the button with 2 holes in his pocket. They went back to the woods and looked on the dark paths. "Here is your button," said Frog. "That is not my button," cried Toad. "That button is small." My button was, you guessed it, big. Toad put the small button in his pocket. A raccoon came out from behind a tree. "I heard that you were looking for a button," he said. "Here is one that I just found." "That is not my button," said Toad. "That button is square." Guess what they'll say now? My button was round. Toad put the square button in his pocket. Frog and Toad went back to the river. They looked for the button in the mud. "Here is your button," said Frog. "That is not my button," shouted Toad. "That button is thin. My button was..." What's the opposite of thin? Oh, you got it. Thick. Toad put the thin button in his pocket. He was very angry. He jumped up and down and screamed, "The whole world is covered with buttons, and not one of them is mine." Toad ran home and slammed the door. There on the floor, he saw his white, 4-holed, big, round, thick button. "Oh," said Toad, "it was here all the time. What a lot of trouble I have made for Frog." Oh boy. Toad took all of the buttons out of his pocket. He took his sewing box down from the shelf. Toad sewed the buttons all over his jacket. The next day, Toad gave his jacket to Frog. Frog thought it was beautiful. He put it on and jumped for joy. None of the buttons fell off. Toad had sewed them on very well. next story I'll read in a day or so is called A Swim. But parents, this is a great story, especially for our younger readers. We don't expect kindergarten students to read it, but we love it when you read it to them and they listen to you. And this is a great activity. It's about classifying buttons by shape, by size, by number of holes. All very important mathematical concept and skills that kids need to have. So we're going to be doing more of those type of activities on Thursday, November the 1st from 6 to 7 p.m. It's a free event here in our media center. I sure hope you can join us. And thanks again for selecting Pilot Knob STEM Magnet School. Goodbye.